Welcome back to FTK, a podcast for the kingdom. FTK is a podcast all about sharing your stories of how the Lord has done miracles in your lives, how he's walked with you through the valleys and been with you on the mountaintops. We often think that sharing our faith is left for the pastors and the preachers and the social media influencers, and we forget that sharing our faith is also left to everyday people like you and me. So you may not be a pastor, you may not be a preacher, but what you do have is your story to share. It actually says in 1 Peter 3 verse 15 to always be prepared to give the reason for the hope in which we have. So we have our story to share. My story brings me hope and reminds me of the faithfulness of God. And your story also does the same. So I want you to be encouraged to go out and share your story today. I'm so excited for this episode. We are going to have Jasmine sharing her story all about how God saved her from a life of exploitation and sex trafficking. We will have some resources down below if this is a situation that you find yourself stuck in today. So please do not hesitate to reach out. And without further ado, let's listen to Jasmine's story. Well, where do you want to start with your story?
Yeah, I think my journey actually starts back in childhood. I grew up in kind of like a tumultuous home. My mom was really young; she was 17 when she met my dad, who was 27, and he kind of coerced her into getting married and having kids. And my mom only spoke French; she didn't really speak any English. My dad was English speaking, and he took her from, to a whole other town away from her family. And so my dad's family was Christian.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They went to, I think, a Baptist church at the time, or Gospel Hall or something like that. And my mom grew up Catholic. And so my mom's also part Indigenous, but grew up with a lot of shame around that and didn't really share about that. But she had her own struggles and mental health and, a lot of stuff in her back history. And so she came to the Sioux and got with my dad when she was really young. And so religion was always kind of like a hot topic in my home. It was kind of...
You'd have quite the mix.
Yeah. So my mom was Catholic, but didn't actually go to church, was kind of angry with God because my dad's family was really, pushed the Bible on her, tried to force her into their kind of Christianity. And so it was a really sensitive subject for my mom. My dad was really trying to force us all to go to church all the time and the Gospel Hall or the Baptist churches. And my dad wasn't, a stand-up character. He had, he was not the greatest father and partner. And so it was really, religion was really difficult. But from a very young age, I always felt called and connected to God. Even as a little girl, I remember, wanting to go to church and being so excited to go to church and seeking out the word and seeking out, Sunday school and memorizing my verses. And I used to go to Pioneer group and all these things, which my mom actually put us in Pioneer group where we would, go learn about Bible verses and
stuff.
Is
this in the summer, like a summer camp?
Well, it was every Wednesday at some local Baptist church.
Okay.
And so I kind of was in both the Catholic church and the Christian church my whole life.
Yeah.
But my family was not very rooted in a faith. And my grandma was a devout Christian and would prayed for us our entire lives. And so I didn't really have a solid, foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always seeking it and always, knew that God was calling me to something, but I didn't understand it or really know.
Yeah.
I went to public school, didn't really, wasn't introduced to any religion in the school. But then in my, I think grade 7 or 8, I decided I wanted to become Catholic, and I started just kind of walking to this church and got involved in this church and started working in the ministry in the church.
I'm learning so much about you. I thought I knew a lot about your story, but I don't.
I know. It's kind of very weird. They actually used to write in newspapers about me and talk about me this young girl bringing kids to church. So I used to collect all the kids in the neighborhood and make them come out to church, this Catholic church. And we would have dances, and it was our way to get kids off the streets. I grew up in the hood of Sault Ste. Marie. And
if you know, you know.
Yeah. And so I was I was a lector, I was reading in the church, and growing up, I used to have these crazy dreams where I would grow up I would wake up reciting Bible verses, and I had no idea how I knew the Bible verse, full a whole chapter actually. If I can't even remember my phone number, so that was really strange that I would remember these things. And so I always felt connected to God. I even started watching like those movies like Stigmata, and I was like, oh, it's like teaching me about religion. So I was like always seeking it in all these like weird places.
Yeah.
But never really stuck to it. And I, went off to university. I was 17 years old. I left. I was like the first in my family to go to university, actually.
Wow.
I was, hoping to go into med school, and I took off mostly because I wanted to escape home, like because it was so, chaotic and hectic.
Yes.
And, my parents smoked in the house, and, there's some substance use, and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't wait to leave home, but I didn't want to run away. So I went as a university student. And so I wanted
to you graduated high school?
I graduated high school.
Okay.
So I had Crohn's disease. I was like in and out of hospital. I was like taking night school, taking summer school just to graduate, to get the heck out of there. I had surgeries my whole teenage years and like tube feeding, and it was,
I know nothing about her life, evidently.
it was crazy. But throughout this whole time, like I always felt this like sense of like connection to God that I couldn't explain. Like I didn't know what it was. And then I was 17. I went off to Western, and my Crohn's flared up, and I had to move off campus because they wouldn't accommodate like gluten-free and like home cooked meals. It was very old school, and you couldn't even have like an element to cook on. And so I had to leave. So I was like 7 hours away from my family. I never slept away from home. So I was like really struggling with being away. And then I had to move from my friends that I just made, and I was living off campus, and I started to really spiral into a depression. And this woman who took me in as like a family member, she's like, I call her my second mom. Her name's Mrs. Shamus Margaret. They took me in to help me with my stomach issue as a teenager because I was friends with her daughter. And they were also Christian.
Wow.
And so she was like always praying over me and getting me in the word. And when I was talking to her about how I was not feeling well, I was like feeling depressed and spiraling, and I, had some, attempts to suicide, and I ended up in hospital, and her husband and her kids would come and visit me, and she would send her son, Jeremiah, to come help me and like take me grocery shopping and take care of me. And then she connected me with her Christian friends in London, because they also went to university there. And so always felt like God's hand over my situation.
Yeah.
And like the strangest ways, like the most random people would kind of just be there, like like angels, literally like angels. Like God planted these people to, minister to me and to, be there with me.
And that is such like a grace of God thing. Like we do nothing to deserve these things, and he just like pours his love out on us. And I think if we all opened our eyes a little bit, like we would have stories like that to share, because I really feel like he is pursuing everybody like that.
Yeah. No, he definitely pursued me hard, and I ran a lot in the opposite direction. But, so I started going to this church, and it was one of the churches like in a home. And then I just, got my mental health like spiraled, and I started dabbling with substances, and I was like my depression was bad, and I kept like going down the wrong road. And then one of my like friends that I grew up with, she actually came to Western with me. Her family actually moved to London. Her dad was a police officer there. And she connected me with some girl from another church.
Wow.
She was not a Christian.
Okay.
She didn't go to church, but she knew that I needed church.
Wow.
Which was hilarious. So I went with her friend. She never came, but I went with her friend
Wild.
to this church in London. And I think they knew that I was just like so unwell.
Yeah.
But they kept, the pastor took me in and asked me to babysit his children, even though I was like totally a nutcase at this time, like not doing well. I was like girl gone wild, and started working in nightclubs. I was like coat check girl and all these things. And
what brought you to those places?
The nightclubs?
Yeah, like what brought you, like were you just looking for a job, and like that's just where the opportunity seemed to be?
Yeah, it just seemed like it was better money, and didn't seem like it would impact me the way it did. It did. But, I just thought it was better money than working in normal places. Yeah. And I found it hard to get jobs in retail. And so I just ended up, being a coat check girl in like a nightclub, and then selling shots and stuff like that. And then, I really started to spiral. But I stayed connected to this church, and they gave me a Bible. It was actually, I think it was like the study Bible, the application study Bible. I still have it. And I just would like find myself sitting on the bus in London, having like these crazy depression episodes, but just like reading the Bible like from one end of the city to the other.
Wow.
And just reading it and reading it and reading it, just trying to hear from God, trying to, grab, at the faith and like God and try to understand. And I ended up getting baptized at this church. Wow. And so I stayed there for a little while and I ended up getting baptized there. And when I got baptized, somebody prophesied over me. I remember they were speaking in tongues. I was like, this is so weird. These people are crazy. And they were like, start speaking in tongues. So I remember I was just like, like I was like not well. And I was like, okay, as long as you just leave me alone, I'll say that. It was so creepy to me. And I didn't understand what was going on, but I knew I wanted a relationship with God. And so I kind of stuck around and like trying to read the Bible. And somebody prophesied over me when I got baptized that I was going to be like Esther. And I was like, I'm not Jewish. And like, I don't understand this. Like, and so I read the book of Esther like 17 times. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't understand. This is so stupid. And I kept pushing away. I'm like, these people are crazy. Like, I don't know what they see in me. And then that's when I really kind of spiraled. But throughout all of that, like I knew that God was still there and like still pursuing me. And even though I kept,
do you feel like he was
away.
Just like letting you do your thing? Like he was there and he was like on the sidelines, but he was just letting you like walk the road that you had chosen to walk. Yeah,
for sure. And that's when I kind of stumbled into a strip club. And I went one night with one of my biology lab partner to make fun of it, actually, because we were like, this is disgusting. Like, who would work in this place? And they asked me to become a shooter girl there. And so I started working in a strip club. And then I was like...
And again, was it the money for you?
Yeah. They were like, you can make a few $100s a night just selling drinks and you don't have to take your clothes off. And I was like, okay, I guess. Yeah. And I knew that it wasn't what God wanted for me. Mm-hmm. I knew, but then I felt like, well, maybe he'll forgive me, hopefully, one day. And I thought that I could kind of stay above the water and kind of just like have my toes in and not get caught up, but it did not happen. It often doesn't. And it's just like one thing led to the next. So I, started to become desensitized to the environment. And the club got shut down for underage drinking. And then a few of the waitresses said to me, well, we're going to go to town and we're going to strip a couple times just to make some money. And then we'll come back as just waitresses here. And they were like, if we get really drunk, like nobody will care. We won't even know what we're doing. And so that's what I did. And that's when I really kind of like, I pushed away from God and from the church. And I was just so ashamed. So I started stripping, started living in a strip club in Windsor, really sunk like pretty low, like pulled away completely, and really felt
Who
like
offered you
alone.
The place to live there?
The strip club.
They offer it.
Yeah.
To all the girls, or
as
just
long as you sign up to work like shift work, like so you basically like stuck working 24/7.
Okay. I've never heard of that. But.
Yeah. So started doing that, and then one thing led to the next, and I ended up meeting a trafficker. Didn't know he was a pimp at the time. I had a bad feeling about him. So I went from Windsor to Toronto, and I met him here.
What brought you to Toronto?
Work, more money. Yeah. I came here with another girl, and she told me Toronto was more money, so we came to Toronto. And so I was working in Toronto, and actually in the strip club, I met another girl who was a Christian.
Wow.
And we used to like read the Bible together in the change rooms in the strip club and like pray and be like, God, please don't hate us. And like, we hope you understand what we're doing. And we're sorry we're disappointments. And, but still like she would, share the word with me and like lift me up, and I would do the same to her. And it was like the weirdest thing, because it was like in like one of the darkest places, and you're like, God cannot be in here. But he still like didn't abandon us. But like you said,
he was there with you.
Yeah. So, ended up meeting this guy. He, pretended to, be a nice pimp. I didn't really know what a pimp was. Like I grew up in the Sioux. Like, I don't know what a pimp is. I saw it on like music videos or whatever, but I didn't actually understand it. And so I actually said to him, like, I'm not interested in a pimp. I don't know why girls sign up for that, but like, that's what I thought. They don't, but that's what I thought. And he's like, well, I'm the nice kind. And like, I want you to be my girlfriend. And I was like, oh, okay.
And is he older than you?
He was significantly older than me. He was, I think 8 years older than me.
Okay.
And so ended up getting, caught up in that and being trafficked by him. And,
And does it just happen so slowly that you don't fully recognize what's happening?
yeah. Yeah. So it was really like started out like a relationship, but like a lot of like love bombing, like really like fast into the relationship right away. Like there were some red flags. Like he said things like, tell me you love me, like right away. And I was like, normal guys, like I'm 20 years old at this point. Like normal guys at 20 are not like, tell me you love me. They're like, nice to know you. Peace out.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to get you a ring. I want to marry you. I want to have kids with you. And I was like, oh, wow, this is so sweet. Like every girl wants to hear this, but definitely red flags.
Yeah.
Very controlling. I couldn't say things like, yeah. I had to say yes. I had to have white bed sheets and towels. Like I wasn't allowed to have colors. Like he was very particular about certain things. Very, very controlling. I had to answer the phone within like 3 rings. And like, so these things were like happened right away. They were controlling. I knew they were weird, but I was like, well, he's just quirky. And I kind of like, dismissed it. And
what kept you there? Was it because it felt like he was pursuing you?
Yeah. I felt like it was too good to be true. Like he said all the right things. He listened to me like nobody ever listened to me. He, did all the things that I wished a guy would have done.
Yeah.
And so it just, fell really hard and fast for him. And and then he started spoiling me and like buying me fancy things. And then I kind of got like sucked into, that whole world of like pimping and like the game and all this I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And eventually started working in like the extras clubs and really spiraling like in worse depression than I'd ever been in. And he started beating me like on a regular basis.
Are you living in the same home as him at this point?
Yeah, well, he lived with all of the women that he was trafficking, so he had about like 10 to 13 girls at a time.
And did you understand that you were all dating him?
No. So I thought that I was his girlfriend and that they were working for him.
Okay.
And I didn't like it, like, but he, was like, this is what I have to do to survive. And I was like, oh, okay.
And did the other girls think they were also dating him and you were just working for him?
So I think some of them yes and some of them no. I think there was a few that like these guys are like really savvy, so they traffic people like in very individualized. They know how to play everyone. And I think some thought like I'm working for him in hopes to be his main girl one day.
Okay.
Others were like I'm working for him because I was with a worse pimp and this is just a better situation. Like he's a little bit less violent or he has a nicer car that I could ride in. And then others believed that they were his main girl, and some didn't even know I existed. Like ultimately they try to not let other girls know about each other.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was like really like at my lowest then. I didn't really do substances at this time. I kind of just dabbled a little bit when I was younger, but was sober, but like really, really depressed, like unwell, completely like pushed away from God, the church, the Bible. I don't even think I had a Bible in my home at this point. I was just like, God won't even love me. Like I remember literally thinking like not even God in heaven can love me. Like I'm so disgusting and dirty and damaged and gross. Like I actually had wanted to be a virgin until I was married or become a nun. But then like my first experience with sex, I was raped. And so it was taken away from me, and I kind of always felt dirty then. And I think that's what made it easier for me to do this sex work, because I just felt like I was just a tool to be used.
Yeah.
And so I felt like, even God can't love me. Like I'm so disgusting. But, and I'd have like a really bad beat up. I was living in Etobicoke, and I would go and I would sneak in the back door of this church, which I know now is like the church on the Q or the Queensway Cathedral.
Yeah.
And I would just like hide because I just really wanted to hear the word of God. I just really wanted to like worship. I wanted to be there. I wanted that, but I was scared to like talk to anybody or to be noticed. And so anytime someone would talk to me, I would run away. And then
what were you feeling like when you were sitting in the back listening and like you're sneaking in? Were you just like, walk me through like what you were feeling? Like peace or like a breath of fresh air, or you were just curious?
Like I think a little bit of all of that. Like I was a little bit curious. I was like hopeful that there was a little bit of light at the end of my tunnel, or like a little bit of a chance that God wouldn't like hate me and think I was disgusting. And I think like I found comfort and peace in the word and just like worshiping. I've always like, I'm a musical person, you know, I'm like always listening to songs that like express my emotions. So like I love just like listening to worship music, and I always loved it then. And so I think that like really just like made my soul feel like at peace, was like just listening to worship and just like worshiping quietly. So I think, and just like being in prayer.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So then we ended up moving out north, and like I was living in Maple.
You with
my trafficker.
The trafficker.
Yeah. And so I started going like to different churches around here, kind of looking for a Christian church. I knew I didn't want to go back to Catholic church. It wasn't for me. But I really enjoyed like the Christian church. So I was looking around for a Christian church, but I couldn't find any. And then I went to one, New Life on Western Road, and I snuck in there a few times when I was like, you know, after a beat up or feeling down. And then, you know, I was like 21 years old, rolling up in a G-Wagon, Mercedes G500 with like long blonde hair extensions and fake nails. I thought nobody would notice me, but they did. And they were like, "Hi, welcome." And I'm like, "Don't talk to me." Like, ran away. Yeah, I was like, "Oh my God, they're going to ask me questions. They're going to know my situation. I'm not going to be welcome here." And I thought like I was not allowed to be in church because I was dirty and disgusting. And so I would just try to hide. And the second somebody talked to me, I like ran away again. And then a few months later, I ended up getting pregnant. I was trying to leave my trafficker. I didn't want to be in this situation anymore. And he knew that I was leaving. And so I think he, you know, forced me to get pregnant to trap me. I was still going to university and was probably, you know, going to successfully complete my degree. But so I think I was like his retirement plan. I was joking about it. I can't pimp forever. So so I was, you know, trying to get away from him, and I was pushing away, and he forced me to get pregnant. And then I just really like gave up that there was like any hope for my future, or that I was getting away from this situation. And I told my little baby brother. I didn't tell my sister because she tells my mom everything. I was like, she's going to rat on me. Like, call the police.
What did your parents think, or what did they think you were doing?
Yeah, I don't know. So I told them I was waitressing all the time. And then my mom found out that I was dancing because my sister told her. You know, I think they were like, well, they were obviously concerned, but they didn't really know how to go about it because I was really hard and like, you know, really hard and closed off and angry and hurt and depressed. And so I think they just tried to just keep the door open for when I was open to talking to them, but I didn't talk a lot. And he told me to tell them that he was a real estate agent. So I just went with that. I was like, yeah, he's a realtor.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So I think like a few times they noticed like bruises or scars or something on me, and they've asked about it, but I was like, I burnt myself with a curling iron, or I got in a bar fight, or you know, he broke my eardrum one time, and I just said like some girl punched me or whatever. I didn't really like share those things with them. I didn't want them to worry about me. And I got good at covering it with, you know, makeup and stuff. And but anyway, so he forces me to get pregnant, and I told my brother what was going on. And one night my brother was a jockey at Woodbine, and he would work at farms. And sometimes the farms are like Pontypool, so it was like way out east in the middle of nowhere. I still don't even really know where it is. And so he was coming to borrow my vehicle, and so I went upstairs to get some gas money because I used to keep my money under my bed. Like a true gangster. I'm kidding. But I used to keep it in a drawer, and I went upstairs to like get this money for him, and my, you know, trafficker, like he was like my fiance at the time, but I would have called him my fiance, but he was my pimp. He busted open the door and he started yelling, and he was drunk, and he struggled with alcoholism, and you know, he has his own like backstory, and so my brother tried to stick up for me, and he slapped me in the head. Not my brother, the pimp slapped me in my head while I was pregnant, and my brother said like, if you don't leave her alone, you're gonna have to deal with me. And my brother's like, this guy's like 6'3", he's like an NFL player, and my brother's like maybe 110 pounds. I'm like 5'6", maybe 5'7". So I was like, Josh, go away, like he's gonna kill you, like just go, it's fine. fine. I got it. Leave it alone. And so my brother ran to police and reported what had happened. And at first they said, like, there's nothing we can do if she's not willing to give a statement and come forward. Like, it's really hard for us to do anything. But then somebody saw him in a parking lot crying and said, well, why don't you go to York Regional Police where she lives? Because I know there's like some human trafficking police officers there, like, that specialize in it. And so he came to York Regional Police, gave the statement of what he witnessed, and that, you know, my trafficker threatened him, and that he watched him punch me in the head. And the police came and they arrested him when he was leaving my house that day, and showed up at my house the very next day. And I actually thought they were like Jehovah's Witnesses, because they showed up in, like, you know, suits with like a minivan. And I was like, I don't want your Bibles, like, leave me alone. I was so nasty and so hard. And I like just found out I was pregnant with this guy's kid. And I, you know, strippers don't get mat leave, so I knew that I needed him. And like, I didn't think there was any way out. And they were like, why don't you come to the station and talk to us? And I was like, only if you're going to give me my man back and, like, my fiance. And so I tried to go talk to these police officers just to get, like, my, you know, baby daddy or fiance out of the, you know, cell and get my truck back. And they wouldn't obviously do that. It's not how it works. And so they ended up pursuing the case, and we had a restraining order, which we didn't really listen to. But I was, like, really scared that, like, he was going to kill me because my family called the police on him. Yeah. So I ran away. I went to New York City. I went to go live with my friend who was working in New York City doing sex work. And she said I could come stay with her. And so I was, like, kind of hanging out with her in New York City.
And no one knows where you are?
Nobody knows where I am. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared. I didn't want my family to rat on me. And I didn't want him to find me because I thought he was going to kill, you know, well, I didn't care about me, but I cared about the baby. And so I was hiding out. And my friend was working for an escort agency in New York. And so I couldn't work. I was so sick. And so I was walking around with the owner of the escort agency, and I told him my situation. Yeah. And he was actually, I know he owned an escort agency, but he's actually a nice guy. And he was Jewish, and he said, you know, like, you're such a sweet, like, there's something about you. And people always said this to me, like, throughout working in the industry, like, there's a light about you. Like, there's something about you. Like, you're not like all the other girls. Like, there's something different about you. Like, you know, you're not meant for this. And I was like, yes, I am. Leave me alone. I'm tough. I'm raw. I can do this. And I was like, and he was like, I don't really want to do this, but I know you're in a desperate situation and you need help. And he's like, I have this customer. I can pretend that it's you that he's trying to hire, but you're going to have to go to Europe, but it's 50,000 euros to go there. But it will get you through your, you know, your maternity. And he's like, I don't think, like, it's scary. I don't know if you should go, but it's good money. And
he doesn't know who he's really sending you to?
Nope, not really.
Wow.
So off I went.
Oh my gosh.
I took off. I went to Europe with some strange man. I had no idea. I didn't even speak their language. Like, they were from Slovenia. So I went to Slovenia and was put up in, like, this, like, crazy fancy hotel. I didn't speak the language. I didn't even meet this, like, the customer for, like, the first 24 or 48 hours. And then finally he came to meet me, and right away, like, they could tell that I was pregnant, but I wasn't showing, but they knew.
Oh.
And so, like, literally, I swear, like, I think I was protected by God. Like, I had to be. And, like, these guys were really shady, and it was crazy. They actually, like, they came to my hotel room. I had, like, a 2-story hotel room that was, like, the presidential suite at this, like, crazy, like, European hotel. And they were like, we need to use your hotel room. And they came in with, like, this pile of money that they put on like, it was like from a movie. They put this money on the table, and they started counting it out. And they're like, take however much money you want. And I was like, oh my God, like, are they going to kill me? And I was like, I'm good with what we agreed upon. Like, 50,000 euros is fine. He's like, are you sure? There was, like, billions of euros there. And they're like, it's your last chance. Take it or leave it. And I was like, no, I'm okay with what we agreed upon. They're like, all right. So we counted out 50,000 euros, gave it to me, put it in my stuff, and off they went. And they didn't do anything to me. They, like, took me, like, shopping and took me to these meetings. They're like, just sit there quietly. Don't say anything. And he's like, I can tell you're pregnant, so I'm not going to let anything happen to you, but you're not the girl that I ordered. I was like, oh my God, that could kill me.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm like, this has to be God. Like,
yeah,
who survives this? Like, nobody survives this. Like, this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so they
like, you're sharing a story that is, like, what you hear about it, but you're like, that doesn't actually happen.
No, I couldn't believe, like, this was my life. And so they let me go. Like, they just they were like, you got it. This place isn't safe for you. You
Yeah.
got to pack up your stuff and get on the next plane and go back to Canada. And I was
Wow.
like, just like that? Like I can just go? And they were like, just go
Wow.
and let us know when you have the baby and like be well. And so like I come back to Canada through customs with like 50,000 euros strapped on me, like on my person.
Oh my gosh.
I got through customs. They didn't even like question me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is so bad. Like, this is so illegal. I'm like, this is so bad. Didn't get in any trouble at all. And I came back. By this time, you know, I was like halfway through my pregnancy. I ended up realizing like there was like, that was a miracle. And I'm like, I think I need to like go back to church and like kind of, you know, like thank God for what he did and saved me and protected me. And you know, I think I'm like called to something different. I started like, I didn't fully believe, but I felt like more so that, you know, I was meant for something more.
Do you feel like you ever remember him in those really dark times and in those scary times, like speaking to you? Or
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I do. Yeah.
or just that he was there?
Like I could feel his presence. Yeah. And so I kept looking for a Christian church, but all I could find in Woodbridge and Maple were like Catholic churches, and I didn't want to go to Catholic church. And so I was really kind of discouraged. And so I'm like nearing the end of my pregnancy now, and I was booking my OB appointment, and I was doodling, you know, like the landline phones, and I had like this cord, and I was like playing with the cord and doodling with this notepad that I found on my door. And I started reading it as I was like kind of coloring it, and it said Maple Community Church. And I was like, Maple Community, that sounds like a Christian church. Like that's not a Catholic church. So I went looking for this church. I said to my sister, I'm like, oh, wow, I found a Christian church. Let's go check it out. So we're looking and looking and looking. We couldn't find the church. And we called the number and nobody answered.
Why?
Because it was in a school gym. It wasn't in like an actual church. We're looking for like an actual like brick and mortar building.
Yeah.
Didn't see the little signs on the street, nothing. Did this 2 weeks in a row. Couldn't find the church. I said, okay, if I can't find this church the third time, like God, I'm done. Like I am not coming. And sure enough, my sister goes, oh, look, there's a little sign. It says Maple Community Church and Discovery Public School.
Oh my.
So we walked into Maple Church and, you know, we sat there, we took it in. We didn't really talk to too many people the first time. And then the second time I connected with the lady who was singing, who was Pastor Lindsay, and didn't share much about my situation, but just was like, yeah, I'm new, and kind of just like seeking God and church and whatever. And you know, she just kind of like welcomed me in. And I think she knew that there's something going on with me, but she didn't ask any questions, didn't like, you know, pry too much, but just kind of like loved on me. And I found everybody was really welcoming and loving. And I thought that was like so strange. And I was open to it now. Like I was in a different space where I was like okay with people talking to me and being kind to me. And but I was still really quiet and reserved. I didn't want people to know about me. I felt like they would like throw me out of the building if they knew about me. But finally, like I had built relationship with Pastor Lindsay, and so she took me to lunch one day, and I was like, I got to tell you something. I just like let her have it. I really like rocked her world. I was like, by the way, I'm working as a stripper. And we had a conversation about tithing. I was like, I tithe though. And she's like, well, I don't know if God wants you to tithe. I was like, why not? It's great money. You know, it was so funny. She's like, oh boy, there's some work to do with you. And so she just kept like loving on me and praying over me, and did not even like remotely judge me. And I thought that was so weird, because like here's this like woman who grew up in the church and is like used to like perfect Christian church people. And I was like, I'm so dirty and disgusting. And like, why are you nice to me? And so I thought it was so weird. I like told her everything, and she just kind of like loved on me. And I just kept like coming back, and she was inviting me to like hang out with like the youth leaders and the young adults. And I thought it was so strange that she would like let me be around like these young people who are so like vulnerable. And I was like, oh, maybe you don't think I'm like dirty and disgusting. And, you know, I just felt like, you know, I found home. I found like my people, my family. Like I was like, I just felt like at home. And so that's when I, you know, finally decided. So this whole time, the one officer who had knocked on my door that I thought was a Jehovah's Witness, he kept like pursuing me like a like, you know, friendship. Like, you know, he actually genuinely cared about me and my kid and our situation. And so he kept reaching out to me. And so now I'm like, I gave birth to my daughter. And I knew that I had to protect her and like get away from this situation. And so finally I reached back out to him, and I reached out to Pastor Lindsay, and I was like, I want to change my life. I want to, give my life to God. I want to like quit dancing. I want to help other women that were in my situation. And so the officer was like, well, you can't help others until you help yourself. And I was like, oh, fine, okay, come take my statement. And so I called Pastor Lindsay, and I was like, I'm going to get my statement, do you want to come? And she was like, yeah, no problem. She picked me up, and she came with me to the police station, and she sat on like the most horrible chairs for 8 hours while I gave my statement, just like praying for me outside. She wasn't allowed to come in with me. And I gave my statement. It took 8 hours, and that was the day. So it was like, I think it was November 21st, 2010.
Wow.
When I promised God, I prayed with Pastor Lindsay, and I promised God that I would never go back to the sex trade, to like dancing, stripping, any of it. That I would devote my life to God and serve in any way that he calls me to serve, and kind of never look back. And that's what I did. So I never went back. And Pastor Lindsay kind of like helped walk me through that, and the officer, and then I had a peer mentor that they connected me with, and I had to like get rid of my really nice house and my nice lifestyle, and kind of went on welfare, went on started from the bottom back up, and that's where I ended up meeting my future husband, and got married and had another kid and all the things. And now I work like doing exactly what I always wanted to do, which I never thought like in my wildest dreams that I'd ever be able to do this. But I just felt so like underqualified. And I think like I always hear people say like God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And I was like, yeah, okay. But I didn't go to school for any, like I never got to finish my schooling because I had 2 kids, and I was like at home taking care of the kids. And all of the jobs that I have now, I didn't apply to them. Like they just called me like out of the blue, and were like, can you come? Can you do this? And so I've been sharing my testimony, and sharing my story, and, really trying to, be like, I hate the term like voice for the voice, because it's not like, you don't have a voice when you're being trafficked, but you're silenced. Yeah. And so I felt like that's like my ministry, and my mission is to be the voice for those who are unable to speak for themselves in that time, and really like advocate for survivors, and speak to them, and kind of show them like what God can do, and that like, you're not dirty, you're not disgusting. And like, if I have a hope and a future, so do you. And so it's kind of what I did. And so I was at a speaking engagement one time at a church, and I shared my testimony, and this woman walks up to me, and she said, you remind me of Esther. And I was like, okay, God.
Oh my goodness.
Back again
full
with Esther.
circle moment.
Yeah. So it was like the weirdest thing. And I shared with her, I was like, well, when I got baptized, they said that. I didn't understand. She goes, well, yeah, because I was like, but I'm not Jewish. And she's like, no, but you're speaking out on behalf of like survivors, and you're going to lead this like generation of survivors and all these things. And I was like, oh, okay. And I got it a little bit more then. I didn't fully understand it, but I just kept sharing my story, and, mentoring other women. And eventually I started working. I got called to go work at Safe Hope Home, which is what I do now. It's like a long-term recovery program. It's faith-based, a recovery program for survivors of human trafficking. And I was like staying home with my kids, and I started working part-time, and I was as a peer mentor, and then I worked as the program instructor, and then I was program manager. And then all of a sudden, the other executive director stepped down, and they asked me to take over as the interim executive director. And I thought, no way, like I can't do this. I don't know like anything about anything. Like I'm just a survivor. I don't have anything else that I bring to the table. I don't really know what to do. And we had this woman from Plan to Protect kind of going through this process with us, and she was like, do you mind if I pray over you? And I was like, yeah, please do. And so she's praying over me. And in the prayer, she said the lines, Jasmine, and she said, God has called you for such a time as this. And I was like, I know that line. Like, I read that book about 17,000 times. And I shared with her, I said, when I got baptized, they prophesied over me that I was going to be like Esther. And she was like, oh my gosh, like the Holy Spirit just like shook me. She's like, you have to do this. Like you are called, like you need to be the executive director of Safe Hope Home. And I was like, I don't know math. Like I can't do the finances. And she's like, I want you to pray about it, but this is what you need to do.
I love that was your one thing. I don't know math.
I know. I was like, I can't do budgets. And I was like, spend money like it's gonna come back tomorrow. So I was like, how am I gonna do all this? And now it's been like 3 and a bit years. I also got a call to go work at Victim Services of York Region out of the blue. It was supposed to be a 6-month contract.
You are busy.
Yeah. And they just keep calling me, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And like it just keeps working out, and it's just like, God just like works it out. And it's tough. It's hectic. I also have 2 teenage daughters now, and I can't even talk about Bella. I can't even talk about my kids. My kids are like, they're a whole other episode. But like now, like my eldest, who, is biologically my trafficker's kid, is like the most on fire for God, like angel. Like she's literally, I'm like, when are you going to go back to, like, you're not real. Like she's like not real. She's so perfect. Like she's literally an angel.
Yeah.
And she's always like, ministering to me and like ministering to her sister and her father and like, praying and like bringing kids to church. And I'm just like, wow, like, look at God, look what you did here. Like, and, she is talking to her biological father, who's no longer a trafficker. He did his time in jail and whatever, is on his own journey. But she even ministers to him.
Wow.
And so I'm just like, wow, like this is crazy. Like God, like this is what you're doing and what you've done. And like, this is our.
And there's no situation that he cannot be present in.
No.
I wanted to ask you, you talk about like how you viewed yourself back then and how you felt like you were dirty and all of these things. What would you say to someone in a similar situation? How does God actually view you, and how does he actually see you? Because it couldn't be further from what you felt and what you were speaking over yourself.
Yeah. I think that was like the hardest thing. And like it took the longest time was like to really, and I think like I still struggle with that sometimes. But I'm getting, better, reading the Bible a lot. Like I did a lot of, one-on-ones with Pastor Lindsay about that. And then, in prayer and then through therapy and kind of like the different women that have come alongside me and ministered to me, kind of really helping me to see, like my identity and like really find my identity in Christ and like what God says about me. And like I remember people saying things to me like, like the Proverbs 31, and I was like, ew, like that is not me. Like I am not that. And, I think it just took like years and years. And it is still something that I do struggle with. But I think like just like really like getting in the word, because it's absolutely the farthest thing. Like, it's 100% the enemy trying to like steal and like, rob what God has for us, because I wouldn't be able to do the work that I do if I kept believing those things about me. Right. And so at first I did it to help to be a better mother to my girls, because of course I had girls. And so I wanted to, so I pretended that I believed that God, like that was, beautiful and fearfully, wonderfully made, and, all these things. And then eventually I started to like kind of act it out, because I knew that my kids weren't like believing just like lip service anymore. And then eventually I like started to really believe, God's word. And, and I think like the church helped a lot with that too. Just like allowing me to be like a part of different ministries and like not turning me away. Yeah. I felt like, if they see me in this light, then maybe I should too. Yeah. Like they let me be like a kids, like a minister. Like I worked in like kids, in like Maple. And then when I went to another church, I was like doing the kids ministry, and then, asking me to like lead prayers and stuff. I was like, oh, okay. So maybe I'm not like dirty and disgusting, but I think like it's a journey. Like it's a really big journey. Yeah. It's hard because especially with social media and like, even if you haven't gone through that, like just like, it's hard to not believe like the lies of the enemy and like listen to God and like what he has to say about us. Yeah.
And I think like you're right, it's a journey for us, but I feel like for God, he's not on this journey of like unlearning things about you. Like I think about the story where Jesus meets the woman at the well and he just knows her by name and calls her by her name, but also acknowledges the fact that, okay, you have multiple husbands, like, but I'm going to call you by your name and I'm going to say, go and sin no more. So it's not like God is on this journey of like, it's us on this journey, but he's saying like, you're free from that. Like you are not those things that you speak over yourself and that the devil speaks over you. Like
Yeah.
You are my daughter.
Yeah.
You are beautiful.
Yeah.
And I know and call you by your name. And like,
Yeah.
that's how I know you.
Yeah.
So that's so nice. My last question, or my other question that I wanted to ask you, is how can, you know, you had a really great experience, I guess, with church, but I know that's not maybe everyone's case. And so I just wanted to see or pick your brain. How can the church do better with situations like this, with women who are in the sex trade or in sex work? Like, how can we as the church come alongside and be better?
Yeah. I wouldn't say my whole experience was great. Like there were some things that were hurtful, and that pushed me away. But I think like the things that helped me were really just like being non-judgmental.
Yeah.
Like Pastor Lindsay was like, when I told her like all of my story, her face did not change. Like she was really just like, she just loved on me.
Yeah.
Like, she just loved on me. And I think just being like non-judgmental and loving and welcoming. And I think like, you know, there were some churches that I walked into and I was like, well, these people think they're holier than thou. And that was my mom's experience. Like, you know, they were so like formal and like, you had to like check all these boxes to be able to, you know, not just come to church, but like, you know, be a part of like helping out or doing certain things. Like obviously I understand as a church, you don't really want somebody who's not in the right space working with like babies per se, but like there's a place where they can help.
Yes.
And so like finding those places and welcoming them in and allowing them to be a part of it and not feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
I think like churches can be like really cliquey and like you feel like you don't belong or you're not like good enough to be a part of, you know, the clique or the group. And I think so like when Pastor Lindsay invited me to come hang out with the youth leader, so she wasn't letting me like run youth. I wasn't ministering to the kids in youth. I was not in the place to be doing that. But, you know, letting me be around, I didn't feel like I was like a heathen or disgusting or like dangerous. Like I felt like they were welcoming me and loving on me and I was, you know, a part of it. And I think like but also not being overbearing. Like she wasn't like all over me. Like I feel like some of the churches when I ran in, like I ran out and I like ran away.
Yes.
They like to ask too many questions.
Yeah.
Like you need to let people in these situations kind of like open up to you in their own timing when they feel safe. Like trust is a huge thing for someone who's gone through trauma, who's, you know, worked in the sex trade, especially like men are hard. It's hard to trust men because there are even like Christian men in the churches, pastors even saying like, you know, I'm a pastor and like, can I get a discount on a blowjob? And you're like, oh my God, like this, like, so I think like allowing, like, I loved that it was like, there was a female in leadership who I was able to speak to and, you know, kind of learn from. And she really like took me under her wing and just like didn't like let me go. Like she was always checking in on me. And I think that was like really important and took me out to eat a lot. And I think everything good happens with food. Like took me
I'm sure she would say the same.
Yeah, I know. It was good to like, just like, it was really informal and casual and I got to know her. And so I could like build trust and be able to share with her my struggles because, you know, somebody who's going through working in the sex trade or, you know, being trafficked or in an intimate partner violence situation, like they're not just going to walk in and be like, hi, this is my situation. Can you help me? Or very seldomly does that happen. And so I think just like being non-judgmental and empathetic and just like loving on them and just like praying over them. And I remember like giving me a Bible was like huge and, you know, teaching me how to read the Bible. Like I didn't like really even know those things and kind of pointing me in those directions. Like the connect groups like were amazing. And
it sounded like she was just your friend.
Yeah.
And maybe we overthink it.
Yeah.
Maybe it really is as simple as just being someone's friend.
Yeah. So now that I know like the formalities, I feel like, you know, maybe she did have me on a roster and had to check a few boxes to call me. But like at the time I didn't feel like that. Like it felt like she was just my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still friends, so.
Yeah. That's so great.
When I share my story, people always say to me like, oh, there's like a light about you. That light. And I'm like, it's Jesus, my friends, the Holy Spirit. When are you going to figure it out?
I feel like even when you were at the door, I was like, you're like so bright and shiny right now. You just have this like smile about you. It's like dark and snowing outside and late and you like are at the door and you're bright and shiny. Like,
yes, I hope I hope that I like never lose that light because, you know, there's a lot of survivors that share their stories and people always ask me like, why are you so different? Like, what's so different about you? Why are you so like healed and others aren't, or like they still struggle, or they're, and I'm like, cause I am free. Like I am free. Like God saved me. Like I am free by the blood of Jesus. Like I don't have chains holding me down. Like it's Jesus. And they're just like, okay, but what else? And I'm like, okay.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah. So sometimes like I present at police college, I present for crown attorneys, I present in schools, places where you're not really supposed to talk about God, but I'm like, I get to, because I'm a survivor and you can't take my story.
Yeah.
It's my truth. And like, this is my story. And so I just, for me, I just hope and pray that like I always continue to share like my testimony and not just like the things that happened to me in life.
Yeah.
So I think that's just like one thing that I try to like really hold on to, because it's hard to, and like it's easy for that to like let that go when like working in government and like,
Yeah. I want to maybe touch on money really quickly, because I think that is what entices a lot of women. And that's what you said kept bringing you in all the way back from just like serving shots to, and it's money. And I think I know God has a very different perspective on money and our love of money. Like it says in the Bible, our love of money is the root of all evil. And like it's an empty promise. And I mean, you talk about that, like how there's a way that the world views money, and that's like what brought you in, but like how is God showing us and teaching us?
Yeah, I think and money is like another really big struggle, and I think like it's ongoing. I grew up in poverty, and I mean like I wasn't on the streets, I wasn't homeless, I had a roof over my head. My mom did really well for, grinding on her own, and then with my stepdad, and but I didn't have like all the fancy things that my friends had. And then when I went to Western and I was going to school with like kids that grew up in like the bridle path with like Bentleys and Ferraris, and I was like, I take the city bus, and so like that's when I like really started to be drawn to like money, and kind of wanting those things. And I think I still love like nice things, and I still want a nice life. And I think so when I was in, the sex trade, the game, when I was doing these things that were not godly and making like all kinds of money, I was like bringing in all kinds of money, but like it was gone. Like it didn't come to like any kind of benefit. Like it was stolen from me. It was, taken up in like some silly bills or like whatever. And it just was not like blessed. And it felt empty and gross. And, I knew it was wrong, and I didn't, like, I didn't feel right. And, when I had to go on like welfare, I went from making like a lot of money, to like $1,200 a month, and living in a basement. And I was like, how am I going to feed my kid? Yeah. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And God just like kept providing. And, it was like, I'm still not like making like Bill Gates' money for sure. That'd be nice. But like
only Bill Gates is making Bill Gates kind of money, him and Jeff Bezos.
So I was like, it's still a struggle, but I think like always I have to a lot. I have to do like, I do like Bible studies about like money and like the love of money. And I love, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name, but I watch him like his TikToks and like all his like advice, the Christian,
Jordan Peterson?
No, well, I love Jordan Peterson, but no, the Christian, money guy. What's his name?
Oh, something Ramsey.
Yes. Not Gordon, Dave. Gordon's the chef. Dave Ramsey. So like I like studied that, and like, because relationship with money is really, really difficult. Like, especially when you like, come from poverty and you have like go in the sex trade, and like you're making like thousands of dollars a night for like, it feels like nothing, but you're literally sacrificing your entire soul for it. And now, it took years, but I'm like finally doing well financially, because God is blessing me. And it's just like so different. Like it just feels different. And it's like, I have a healthier relationship with it. But again, like it's, I think it'll always be a struggle for me. And I have to really watch that. Like, you can't serve two gods. And it's like, that's another big struggle for me. And I think it'll be ongoing. But like, I don't want anything to separate me from my God and my walk with God. And and, you know, being a good example to the kids and to the people that I work with and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like
Yeah.
going through those Bible verses
Yeah.
over and over again.
That's good. It's a
Yeah.
continual, like for us,
Yeah.
it is a continual thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I want to encourage you and say that you do, like, you have, just from following you on social media, you are busy and you are working and you are invested in something that is eternal, and you do have really cool opportunities to go and speak into schools, and like you have been given a voice that many of us won't have that opportunity, especially in school. So I just want to encourage you to keep walking fearless, that the Lord is with you. He will back you up, support you, defend you, and like just boldly continue to share your testimony.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming
Thanks for having
in
me.
our little mini snowstorm. It wasn't really a snowstorm, but a little bit, a lot of snow out there. Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe we'll have Jasmine on our Instagram stories and you can ask her some more questions, because I know that you have a lot of knowledge in your head. So thank you so much. And we will see you guys all next time.